In the heart of a small, quiet church community, life moved with a comforting rhythm. The bells tolled every morning, calling the faithful to prayer. Among them was Sister Maria, a woman who had given her life to God, devoted to her vows and her faith. Her days were simple, filled with acts of service and quiet moments of reflection, where she found peace in her unwavering commitment, but peace is a fragile thing. Even in a place of refuge, where faith is meant to shield the heart, something unexpected can slip through. For Maria, the life she had so carefully built was about to be tested in a way she could never have imagined. What happens when love collides with guilt? When a single choice carries the weight of everything you hold sacred? One moment, one mistake, can unravel it all, leaving a trail of consequences that no prayer can erase. This is the story of devotion tested beyond its limits. A love so forbidden it threatened to destroy not only two lives but the trust of an entire community. Stay with us, because this is a journey you won't forget. Maria's life had always been steady, grounded in her faith and her role as a devoted nun. She found peace in the predictability of her days, prayers at dawn, caring for the community, and moments of quiet reflection. Then came Pastor James, and everything began to shift. James had a presence that drew people in. His sermons were heartfelt, his guidance sincere, and his kindness effortless. To Maria, he seemed like the embodiment of spiritual strength, someone she could turn to not only for guidance but for understanding. Their connection started with shared responsibilities, organizing church events, discussing the needs of the parish, and collaborating on ways to bring the community closer together. At first, their interactions felt natural. They talked about their faith, their challenges, and their shared hope of serving others. But those conversations began to linger a little longer. James would catch her eye during a meeting, and Maria found herself holding on to his words in a way that was unfamiliar, even thrilling. A spark ignited, subtle yet undeniable. It started with small gestures. A hand that lingered just a moment too long during a handshake. A private smile exchanged during quiet moments. Late-night discussions in the empty church, where the air seemed heavier with unspoken words. They began seeking each other out, an unplanned meeting in the chapel, an offer to help with a task that could have easily been handled alone. One evening, while discussing preparations for a parish event, Maria realized she was standing closer to James than she ever had before. Their shoulders touched briefly, and the air between them felt charged. Neither moved away. In that moment, something shifted. It was no longer about shared duties or casual friendship. Soon, their meetings became intentional. James would wait for Maria after evening prayers, and together they would walk the quiet corridors of the church, their words taking on a depth that felt almost dangerous. He spoke of his struggles, his loneliness, and the weight of his responsibilities. Maria listened, offering her support, but she could feel herself getting drawn into something far beyond comfort or guidance. Their bond deepened with each passing day. A stolen glance during Mass turned into a quiet touch in the hallway. They shared whispered confessions, stories they had never told anyone else. And then, one night, under the soft glow of candlelight in the chapel, their restraint gave way. A kiss. Gentle, hesitant, but filled with the emotions they had been fighting to suppress, that kiss opened a door they couldn't close. From that moment on, their connection became a secret they carried together, a bond that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. They met in hidden corners, their conversations filled with stolen laughter and quiet promises. Yet, with every fleeting touch, with every embrace, the weight of their actions began to press down on them. Maria and James were no longer just a nun and a pastor. They had become something else entirely, two people caught between the lives they had vowed to lead and the desires they could no longer deny. Maria and James's secret relationship was a storm that grew quietly, unnoticed by the world around them. What began as fleeting touches and whispered words soon became nights filled with longing, passion, and guilt. Their stolen moments were carefully planned: a meeting in the back pews after the church had emptied, late-night conversations in the dim light of the chapel, and walks in the secluded garden where they could escape the watchful eyes of the congregation. Each time they met, they promised it would be the last. But the pull between them was too strong. They couldn't stay away. What started as a bond of trust had transformed into something forbidden, something they both knew could destroy them. Over time, their connection grew deeper, their moments of passion more reckless. They found solace in each other's arms, ignoring the voices in their heads that screamed of betrayal and the weight of their vows. Weeks turned into months. Their secret life was woven into the fabric of their daily routines, hidden beneath layers of devotion and duty. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, and their actions began to catch up with them. Then, it happened. Maria felt the changes before she could admit them to herself. The nausea, the exhaustion, the undeniable weight that settled in her chest. At first, she pushed the thought away, clinging to the hope that it wasn't possible. But as the days passed, the truth became unavoidable. She was pregnant. A silent scream echoed in her mind as the reality set in. This wasn't just her secret anymore, it was something that could never stay hidden. The vows she had taken, the life she had dedicated to God, all now seemed impossibly distant. Her hands trembled as she thought about James. How would he react? What would this mean for them, for the life they had so recklessly risked? When Maria told James, his reaction was not what she had hoped for. His face turned pale, his words sharp and defensive. He refused to believe it, or at least pretended not to. His denials cut through her like a knife. "This can't be true," he said, his voice cold and distant. "It's not mine. It couldn't be." It was as though their love had never existed. The moments they had shared, the promises whispered in the dark, were suddenly erased. James was protecting himself, his image, his standing in the church. But Maria wasn't going to be silenced. What James didn't know was that Maria had evidence. Proof of everything they had shared, everything he was so desperately trying to deny. And when the time came, she wouldn't hesitate to use it. The question now was, how far would she go to ensure the truth came to light? Maria had spent days, even weeks, wrestling with the truth, the shame, and the overwhelming weight of what she knew. The silence between her and James had become unbearable, each moment a reminder of what they had done and what they had lost. She couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. She wasn't going to let him deny what they had shared, not when it was a truth she knew, down to her very bones. Maria's resolve hardened. She wasn't going to remain silent. She wasn't going to be the one painted as the villain while James walked free, untouched by the consequences of their actions. Her mind was set. She had proof that would expose everything: the photos, the texts, the recordings, all the evidence she had carefully gathered over the months were now in her hands. The intimate moments they had stolen in the dark, the words of love and desire that had passed between them, were all documented. She had caught every glance, every touch, every whispered promise they thought was safe, and now, Maria had control. She knew what this would mean: the church, their community, their lives would be torn apart. But the truth, as dangerous as it was finally in her hands. She was no longer powerless. With trembling hands, Maria prepared to expose it all. She wouldn't let James deny what they had. She wouldn't let him bury their secret in the darkness any longer. The moment had come, and it was going to change everything, but how would it unfold? Would she expose it in public? Or would she give James one last chance to come clean before everything exploded? The world was about to learn the truth, and there would be no turning back. The moment Maria revealed the truth, everything changed. The weight of her decision hit like a storm, sweeping through the church and the community with a force no one could have predicted. The photos, the messages, the recordings, everything she had carefully preserved for this very moment was now laid bare for all to see. And with it came the undeniable reality: Maria was pregnant, and the father was none other than Pastor James. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Shock and disbelief rippled through the congregation. The very foundation of their trust in James was shattered in an instant. The man they had respected, the leader they had followed, was now exposed as a liar, a hypocrite, and a man who had betrayed everything he swore to uphold. As the truth spread like wildfire, the fallout was impossible to contain. Maria, the quiet nun who had always been seen as a beacon of purity, was now a symbol of scandal and betrayal. The whispers started almost immediately, their words sharp and filled with judgment. Her once holy life, now a shadow of what it had been, was torn apart in front of everyone. And James? He had no defense. His denials had crumbled under the weight of Maria's evidence. His reputation was shattered, his credibility destroyed. The community he had once led with such confidence was now in chaos, struggling to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the truth that was now laid bare. What happened next was inevitable: the aftermath. Maria was forced to face the consequences of her actions, as was James. But the real question was, could they ever go back to the way things were? Could their lives be rebuilt after everything had fallen apart? The church, their love, their futures, they were all in ruins, and nothing would ever be the same again. The fallout had only just begun, and the emotional cost of their actions would be felt for years to come. James's fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. One moment, he was the respected leader of the church, a man of faith who had the trust of his community. The next, he was a pariah, cast out by those who once looked to him for guidance. His reputation, painstakingly built over years of service, was shattered beyond repair. Church members turned their backs on him, their whispers sharp and filled with condemnation. The very community that had once admired him now saw him as nothing more than a hypocrite, a man who had betrayed the very values he preached. James lost everything. His career was over. His position as pastor was stripped away. No apology, no excuse could undo the damage he had caused, not just to his own life, but to the lives of everyone who had trusted him. His once promising future was now a distant memory, erased by a single, unthinkable act. But the question remained: what had he truly gained in the end? A fleeting moment of passion had cost him everything. And now, he was left to face the aftermath alone, with only the wreckage of his past to cling to. Maria, on the other hand, was beginning a new chapter of her life. The scandal had torn apart everything she had known: the church, her vows, the life she had devoted herself to. But in the wake of the storm, there was a sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe. She was no longer bound by the expectations and constraints of her past. Leaving the church behind was not easy. It meant walking away from everything she had built her life around. But with the truth revealed, Maria found the courage to step into the unknown. She could finally live on her own terms, without the constant shadow of guilt and secrecy looming over her. What would become of her now? Would she find peace in the life that awaited her outside the walls of the church? Or would the scars of her past continue to haunt her, no matter how far she tried to run? And what of James? Where would his path lead him now? The future was uncertain for both of them, but one thing was clear: their lives would never be the same. The cost of their actions was too great, and the consequences, too severe. They had both lost everything, and only time would tell if they could ever rebuild. Maria had her freedom, but freedom came with its own weight. The choices she made, the love she once believed in, and the secrets she revealed, they would leave a mark on her soul forever. Walking away from the church meant leaving behind not just her past but also a part of herself. Would she ever truly find peace, or would the whispers of regret follow her wherever she went? James, once a beacon of hope for so many, was now a man in ruins. His fall from grace had stripped him of everything: his career, his community, and his dignity. Redemption felt like a distant dream, one he might never grasp. Could he ever rebuild what was lost, or would he be trapped in the shadow of his mistakes for the rest of his life? The story ends here, but the questions remain. What happens when the weight of guilt collides with the search for redemption? When love turns to loss and scars refuse to fade? If stories like this one capture your imagination and leave you wanting more, join us for another journey into the unexpected. Subscribe and turn on notifications to uncover more tales of love, betrayal, and the secrets that change lives forever. The next story is one you won't forget. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care, and remember, sometimes the truth is the hardest thing to hide.